It's the second Sunday of Advent. And there is much about which to pray and reflect. We have John the Baptist historically set in kind of the history of time, the history of the people of Israel. And he's going around quoting the prophet Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah is going back, he was prophesying when the people of Israel were in captivity in Babylon. And he's saying things are going to get better. The rough places are going to be made smooth, the mountains laid low, the valleys filled, and everything. We're going home. We're going back to Jerusalem, to our homeland, to our identity. So it's a great proclamation that John the Baptist is making in his time, that prepare the way, he's coming soon. That's really what the gospel is about. But I want to point out something in Paul's epistle to the Philippians. He says, and that's in our second reading, "And this is my prayer, that your love may increase more and more in knowledge and in every kind of perception, to discern what is of value, so that you may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ." So what I would like to talk a little bit, share with you, is about knowing what's of value as we prepare for the coming of Jesus. At least the celebration, he's always coming. But in our churches, and I encourage you in your homes, to have a little Advent wreath or something. But in the churches, you have the second candle lighted up today, and it's usually in a circle of greenery. So the light of Christ is coming, increasing. And the greenery, at least in our part of the world, greenery is not what's around. Things aren't growing greenly. And so we bring in the green inside. We bring a Christmas tree inside, and we'll talk about that later on, maybe next week. But what's really highlighted is that in the middle of the wreath is Advent emptiness. Yeah. And that light shines on the emptiness, in the longing, in the wanting. Now, Advent is a time for longing. I brought along a visual aid. It's an empty bowl, of course, and I pray with this in every morning during prayer time. It's my Advent bowl. It's my reminder of emptiness and longing.
Hold it higher.
It's empty. There's nothing in it, except I would like it to be filled. And the value that Paul is writing to the Philippians about is the knowledge to not be fooled by false fullness. Okay, this is the call of John the Baptizer. Repent from your false ways of trying to find completion. So you see I have a bowl, so I'm going to put it away so I can use my hands. I would encourage you to have something an Advent wreath on your tables or office desk or apartments or wherever, or a bowl or something that reminds you that there is a holy emptiness, a longing, and to let that be a reality. I have a little thought that if we deal well with emptiness, if we are okay with emptiness, we'll be okay. And it's when we try to find completion in answers, in things, in relationships, everything is either an invitation or a disappointment. Oh, you didn't fulfill me. You didn't complete me. This alcohol didn't. This whatever. It left me even more empty. What gets us in trouble, I think, this is just an offering, but I think it's how we try to rearrange reality to create fullness. That's always going to get us in trouble. And get us so that we'll try to find God by our creating God in our fullness. That I would like to fill that bowl with jelly beans or poppycock or whatever, or anything. My demand for fullness will get me in trouble with most of reality. If I don't have what I want, I'm going to be frustrated with everything else. Now maybe this is too dramatic, but I think Advent prayer has to do with really letting go of my expectations of fullness and not be disappointed in incompleteness. That's our Advent is probably the most realistic time of the liturgical year, because it calls us to the awareness that, like the people in Israel, we are far from home. We are far from completion. We long to have the rough smooth and the mountains laid low. We long for perfection. And that's a holy desire. In everything, believe it or not, whether we want to say it or not, in everything we long for God. And if we make things into God, there's going to be a frustration. And we say, no, I'll find it. I'll make it. Or I'll say, it can't be found and life is a dreary mess. No, every day is Advent. Every day is a confrontation with my demands for completion. And we kneel down. It brings us to our knees. How we want longing. I want longing from you all, from this. And what we get is not a complete emptiness, but that bowl and our hearts are symbols of the longing either to grab or receive. So the growth of the Advent wreath, the greenery, is to come. And the light of Jesus is saying, you can't have it all now. You can have invitations. You can have temporary satisfactions. They're good, but it's always an invitation. And that's why some people like to have Christmas instead of Advent, and when Christmas comes, it's boring. And it didn't work. We tried to have Christmas without longing. No. If you want to have a joyful Christmas, I think it's this discernment that Paul talks about, to know the value of things. Everything is valuable because it points beyond itself. So if you want to have a joyful Christmas, it seems to me, it has to do with accepting little by little that your stable is as empty as the one in Bethlehem, longing for the light of Jesus. We celebrate it in the Eucharist. We celebrate it in our daily prayer, even if we just pass by an Advent wreath in our homes, even if we pass by an empty bowl of any kind. Emptiness is a realistic prayer. We receive the Eucharist so that we can be open to all the ways he invites us toward fulfillment.